Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. You are taking a live look at Thayer Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts for Samson Okunlola's official commitment ceremony. The highest rated uncommitted prospect and #1 player in Massachusetts is about to make his college decision. The offensive tackle is deciding between 4 finalists. You can see the hats there in front of you. We have Alabama, Florida, Miami, and Michigan State. Blair Angulo here to help take the pulse for us. Blair, where do things stand with his commitment?
Yeah, for the longest time, it has looked like a Florida versus Miami battle. Obviously, Alabama and Michigan State also get hats on the table. This is a classic Billy Napier versus Mario Cristobal tussle that we've kind of grown accustomed to seeing, Emily, here in this 2023 recruiting cycle. It's getting really spicy between both of those programs. They've been duking it out for the same type of prospects here for the last few months, and Samson Okunlola is obviously the latest one.
You can see his family and friends behind him. We heard his head coach talk about just what he means to that school and how much they'll miss him there. Miami, though, a longtime front runner in his recruitment, but it sounds like that there could be a little bit of late movement. Whoever lands him gets what, Blair?
A premier offensive tackle, the #3 rated player at his position in this class. This is a type of prospect that you look at and you wonder how quickly he can make a dent in a depth chart, because he has all the tools, the athleticism, the length, the physical upside to be a premier offensive tackle in whatever conference, whatever team he decides to go for. And obviously a top NFL draft pick, even a few years away from that NFL draft. I think we see a left tackle, we see a player that can be very versatile. And although it's a little bit, maybe not expected for offensive linemen to contribute right away, he has all the tools if he packs on a little bit of weight and gets his technique right early on in camp to be able to make a dent in that depth chart.
Hey, Blair, you've been to a lot of these commitment ceremonies. Take us there. What is it like? What do you think he's feeling right now? And what's the mood like in that gym?
I always try to get a sense and the vibe of everyone else around him, because when you can see the family, you can see the friends a little stressed out, then you know that the process has been really tumultuous, right? Or it's been a roller coaster. It's been a really difficult decision for this prospect. You look at maybe the teachers and the educators and even everyone else at the school, and I think I always like to get a feel for how that prospect is dealing with the process. You look at his hats, obviously, and the Miami hat is the one that looks really, really nice. I don't know if you're a believer, Emily, in hat science, but the other ones, they have the kind of the dent. The Miami hat kind of looks more sleek and stylish. So I always look at that as well as maybe an indicator to see kind of what's going to happen.
Does that have anything to do with his decision, Blair, is based on the hat? I mean, there's probably a lot of Miami fans watching right now going, oh, yeah, no, the hat, it's totally a thing.
This is a thing. I think the fans love to watch the photo of the hat and which one maybe he might have picked up at a gas station last week, or which one he's actually worn or would actually take out on a Friday night when he goes to the movies with his friends.
All right,
this is
Blair,
an actual
actually,
thing.
I gotta cut you off here. He's ready to make his announcement. Let's take you live.
I'd first like to thank God for everything He's done for me in the name of the Father and the Son. So the past 2 years, again, we're highly recruited, becoming a 5-star, so many achievements back to back. I mean, I want to shout out to my coaches, football and wrestling. I would not be anywhere here right now without wrestling. Wrestling really changed my life and put discipline in me just like football did. I just want to thank my teachers. I want to thank anyone who's put me in this position. This would be great. I want to thank my brothers, for always putting pressure on me and making me work harder and harder. I want to thank my friends. My friends are just like, who just really pushed me and harder and harder just to be great in themselves. But with that being said, I'll be committed to the University of Something right. You can't have pancake mancha without pancakes.
Is there anyone that can help us? got there, Chef. I got the shit.
So y'all seen this legendary?
All right.
Please back up.
That said, I'm committed to University of Miami.
There you have it. The syrup, the pancakes, all of it. Samson Okunlola is headed to Miami. We actually have a reporter there on the scene. We'll bring him in later on. But Blair, first up, what is your initial reaction?
A huge pickup for Mario Cristobal. They're pouring syrup all over the offices there in Coral Gables right now. Now with Samson Okunlola in the fold, Miami has the number 3 rated offensive tackle to pair with fellow 5-star offensive lineman Francis Mauigoa. So you think about Miami trying to get bigger and more physical in the trenches. They've been able to do that now with Samson Okunlola joining Francis Mauigoa, and Mario Cristobal continues to steamroll his way towards a really elite offensive line class.
Wow, they want to get bigger. That guy will definitely help. Samson Okunlola committing to Miami. Again, we're going to dig into this a little bit later in the show with one of our reporters who is there at Thayer Academy, and we'll speak with Samson, so we'll get to him in just a little bit. But what a way to kick off the college football recruiting show. We have so much more to get into. Less than a week out now from signing day. As always, we remind you to please submit your comments, questions, concerns. I'm sure you got a lot of them down in that chat, and we will get to them at the end of the program. So let's roll through some headlines to start off here. Blair, Mississippi State has promoted defensive coordinator Zach Arnett to the permanent head coaching position. He takes over following the sudden and tragic passing of Mike Leach earlier this week. Obviously a tough role to fill, but how important is continuity as they navigate through this difficult time?
Yeah, it's really important for Mississippi State. The relationships are obviously very important, and Zach Arnett is someone that can keep that roster united, obviously, during these difficult times. But he's also a coach that has a familiarity with the recruits that Mississippi State has been targeting. So, in a way, it's allowing them to, make it as easy as possible as they navigate through this difficult time.
Certainly. Meanwhile, in some recruiting news, 4-star quarterback Lincoln Kienholz flipping his commitment from Washington to Ohio State yesterday. The Buckeyes also landing a commitment from 2024 5-star wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 receiver in the class. How hot is Day and company on the trail right now?
Well, it gives them a little bit of calmness right after losing Keon Keeley to Alabama. And Jeremiah Smith becomes the second top 5 player in the 2024 class to commit to Ohio State. They already have the number 1 overall player in that class, quarterback Dylan Raiola, the 5-star from the state of Arizona. And now he has a clear top target in that class as they hope to build another top 5 national recruiting class in the rankings for the next cycle.
Number 1 quarterback, number 1 wide receiver. The Ohio State offense just keeps getting better. Earlier today, LSU landed a pledge from 2023 4-star corner Javian Toviano. The Texas prospect is the number 9 corner in the class. Big get for Brian Kelly, and he may not be done. So how big is it to get Toviano?
Yeah, they call it DBU, and this is another indication that LSU still has a lot of recruiting pool at that position. They have 3 4-star safeties committed in this class. Javian Toviano is the second 4-star cornerback. They're also, remember, in the chase for high-profile defensive back Desmond Ricks from IMG Academy in the state of Florida. He reclassified from the 2024 class, and obviously he will be taking an official visit to Baton Rouge this weekend. So LSU making major noise along the defensive back front.
All right, another commitment, 4-star linebacker Arian Carter making his pledge to Rocky Top yesterday. 1 week out from signing day, the Smyrna, Tennessee native told our Go Vols 24/7 that he picked the Vols over Alabama because it felt like home. That makes sense. What's the hometown team getting in Carter?
I think another impact player along the defensive line and even in that box, right? He's a 4-star linebacker that can make a lot of plays between the tackles. He can chase down ball carriers. He's really athletic in space. And then you couple him with the defensive group that already includes 4-stars David Hobbs, Chandavian Bradley, and Caleb Herring. This is a group that obviously is capitalizing on Nico Iamaleava being the premier passer in their class, and they're also getting plenty of star power on the defensive side of the ball.
Definitely need to build up that defensive depth. Meanwhile, more 5-star headlines. We told you about quarterback Dante Moore's surprise visit to UCLA this past weekend. That was on our last show. But Steve Wiltfong adding some updated details this afternoon, going as far as to say, quote, "The buzz is favoring UCLA at this point." Blair, pick your jaw up off the floor and tell me how something like this could happen.
You know, this was all, I think, an effect of Kenny Dillingham leaving Oregon as the offensive coordinator there in Eugene to take the head coaching job at Arizona State. That's opened the window for UCLA to make a move. They got him on campus down to Westwood. It was a rainy weekend down here in Los Angeles, Emily and Steve, but it sounds like he had a great time based on the report from Steve. And, this comes after UCLA and the UC Regents gave the Bruins their okay to officially join the Big Ten Conference for the 2024 class. And what better way than for UCLA to continue to make inroads in the Midwest than with the number 1 rated player in that region if he were to, make it to Westwood.
And here is the man of the hour, Steve Wiltfong, here dropping this report on us late this afternoon. Steve, what can you tell us about the developments with Dante Moore?
Well, there was some buzz behind the scenes today that UCLA was a program to watch here down the stretch with Dante Moore coming off his official visit to UCLA. I think the opportunity to come in and be a first-day starter is really exciting to play for a coach like Chip Kelly and the pedigree he has with the quarterback position, to go play for a program that had the nation's number 10 scoring offense, number 3 total offense, and a balanced attack that was number 4 in the nation in rushing offense. And then, I talked to his head football coach over there at Detroit King today, Ty Spencer, who said that he really liked it and then went into about Chip Kelly being very knowledgeable and coached a lot of good quarterbacks. And, there's been some change at Oregon with Kenny Dillingham not being there any longer. And I think Dan Lanning's done a good job of trying to bridge that gap, but he had such a close relationship with Kenny Dillingham. Oregon maybe feels a little bit different to him. Now, Oregon's still plugging along, doing what they can to keep Dante Moore as the jewel of the class here. And they're certainly in on a lot of other 5-stars as well. But we'll see what happens here with Dante Moore, who wants to enroll early at the school of his choice and start right away. And the other element is Bo Nix could be back at Oregon next year as well. And I think that's something else Dante's pondering.
Steve, we wondered what kind of effect UCLA's move to the Big Ten could have for their recruiting efforts nationally. They've been known to be a program that maybe stays out west a little bit more than maybe they should, right, given their national appeal. But if Dante Moore would join the fold, what kind of potential impact nationally could you see this having for the Bruins?
Well, maybe it'll make things more enticing for local prospects to stay home and play in the Big Ten than seeking out the SEC or Big Ten from the region that they live in. It's obvious that the Pac-12 has lagged behind from top to bottom when comparing it to the other programs and looking at the NFL draft. And so I think, first of all, UCLA showing that they were on an upward trajectory this year, having a 9-3 season and playing in some big ball games certainly helps with that. And then going into what is probably widely considered a more prestigious football league certainly will help as well. But we'll see. Obviously they're going into a league with some staffs that do a great job on the trail as well.
All right, let's switch gears. We are coming down to the wire here, and you're putting in some last-minute crystal balls ahead of signing day next week, including some crystal balls for 2 of the top prospects from the state of Alabama. That's 4-star defensive end James Smith and 4-star edge Quay Rusa, both crystal balled to Alabama. So when do you think we're going to hear a decision from them?
Well, they're going to announce their college decision on December 21st, the first day of the early signing period. So Alabama right now, I think, is the team to beat. Hugh Freeze and several Auburn staffers went in there this week. Hugh Freeze also paid a visit to the training facility, Madhouse, where they get their work in. Previously, he did not meet with the kids, but building inroads with them at that time. And they'd like to get them back over there this weekend for one more sit down with them. But right now, all the buzz is with Alabama. That's the program that both those young men know what they're getting with. They've been there several times. They understand what Alabama's about. They know the coaching staff there well. They know Coach Roach well. And so I think the consistency of Alabama's program has put them in prime position to land two more of the state's best and add to what's certainly shaping up to be one of the better defensive line hauls in a while. And, we'll see if Auburn can change the narrative over the next 6 days.
Yeah, Alabama setting the pace right now in the team recruiting rankings for this 2023 recruiting cycle. They also received a crystal ball from you, Steve, for Damari Brown, the 4-star corner. What's the latest with him?
Yeah, that's another one where currently I like Alabama for Damari Brown. Nick Saban and some staffers went in this week. I think it's a program that he's always had a keen eye on. And I know 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting Andrew Ivins agrees, talking with him this week about Damari. But you certainly have Florida State in there still battling, and Miami's going to make a late push here. And so that one still could get interesting over the next 6 days. But I think that Alabama is in pole position for Damari going into his college commitment.
All right, Steve, you handed another crystal ball to 4-star linebacker Tausili Akana for Oklahoma. So what's the latest on his decision with signing day? 6 days away.
Well, this is another one that may be tight. And again, Blair Angulo's close to this one. So if he wants to chime in, awesome. But I think that Oklahoma has set the bar with Tausili Akana. I think he's really hit it off with Brent Venables and his coaching staff. I think he likes the defense and the way that he would be utilized. This is a young man that on one down can rush the passer, and then on the next down seamlessly drop and cover and make plays in space and be very comfortable. He's got a unique skill set, and Brent Venables has shown over the course of his career as a defensive play caller that he knows how to scheme those guys in there to be very disruptive and be playmakers. Now you have Texas in the picture. His sister plays volleyball over there in Austin. I think the Longhorns have made a late push here. LSU's always been a contender led by Jamar Cain's efforts. Utah, I believe, is trying to make a late push. Maybe there's some others, but I think everybody's chasing Oklahoma.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Steve. I have not put in a crystal ball pick yet. I have heard that Utah's making a really strong push there. He's a player that's originally from the state of Hawaii. Remember, he moved to Utah to play during that COVID year because there was no cancellation in the Beehive state. So he wanted to kick off his recruitment. It obviously paid off. He stayed in the state of Utah. And although that's not his home state, it's felt like home. So I like the Utes right now making a late push. But Oklahoma has made a tremendous impression. He has the longest standing relationship with Brent Venables, who was recruiting him at Clemson, before he even made it to Norman. So I think the relationship, the comfort level is there. And Texas can't sleep on them. He was out there for the Alabama game. He likes LSU quite a lot too. So you hit it there with everything, Steve. With a player like him, when you look at maybe the potential for him to make a decision closer to signing day. When you think about Oklahoma specifically, how big would this be for Brent Venables to add another piece in that defensive class?
Well, they're trying to rebuild a program that won just 6 football games this year, one that's always been in the picture for the college football playoff for the several years prior. And then particularly with Brent Venables, they ran out one of the worst defenses in college football statistically. And we know that's not a place that he is used to being. He's used to having one of the most stout, entertaining defenses in the country, one that makes adjustments in game and really suffocates opponents by the time the second half comes around. Oklahoma has the nation's number 8 recruiting class right now, Blair. PJ Adebaware is one of the most explosive pass rushers in the country. I think they've really landed some interesting pieces in the secondary like Makari Vickers and Jacoby Johnson. Lewis Carter is one of the more athletic linebackers in the country. And if they can add Tausili Akana to some of those guys that I mentioned in the fold there, it starts to give Brent Venables the personnel that he wants to have to play the defense that he wants to play.
All right, it is spatula season, as you like to call it, and I know you're keeping your eyes on a couple of potential flips outside of Dante Moore. Another 5-star running back, Cedric Baxter. He's been locked in with the Longhorns since August, but Florida State making a push here. He's an Orlando kid, so where do Mike Norvell's efforts to keep him in state stand?
Well, Mike Norvell and his staff went in home with Cedric Baxter this week. He also visited Florida State a couple times this season where he liked the way that the running game was utilized in this offense. And obviously Norvell has a track record of getting several running backs drafted at Memphis, but I still think this is an uphill climb for Florida State. He's expected back in Texas this weekend. Family loves Tashard Choice, loves the trajectory of the Longhorns program, and talking to his family, I think it's likely that he stays with Texas as they put the finishing touches on a top 5 class.
Yeah, in the state of Texas, Steve, speaking of which, Mikal Harrison Pilot, the four-star, seems to be leaning TCU. When could we expect him to make a decision?
He's announcing at the All-America Bowl on January 9th. That could be a big day for the Horned Frogs. His top 247 linebacker, Jelani McDonald, also announces his college decision that day. TCU, they have the number 19 recruiting class in the country right now. This is one of their top recruiting classes that they've had in the 24/7 Sports era going back to 2010. Harrison Pilot was at TCU this past weekend. He's going to Houston this weekend. That's where his dad played. Houston's like a second home to him, but I just think he loves TCU, loves the offense. Talked to me this week about Coach Riley and playing for Garrett Riley in that scheme. Talked about the development at the position, particularly with Quentin Johnson, who's from the same high school as him. And I think TCU is going to be tough to beat for this playmaker.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. But don't get too comfy in case, any Dante Moore news breaks in the next half hour. We'll make sure to bring you back on to talk about it. Thank you again. Well, if the week leading up is any indication, signing day is about to be nuts. Join us for wall-to-wall coverage. We'll bring you all the surprise flips, the commitments, and headlines as they happen. You won't want to miss it, and a great way to guarantee that you don't is to go ahead and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. The headline, of course, is a potential Dante Moore flip, but there are a lot of other prominent prospects on Flip Watch, so let's send it over to Director of Scouting Andrew Ivins and National Recruiting Analyst Cooper Petagna for more names.
All right, Drew, 6 days away from National Signing Day, and last year the big shocker was Travis Hunter, the #1 player in the country, who flipped his commitment from Florida State to Deion Sanders in Jackson State. A year later, Drew, we're taking a look at this, and we're kind of wondering, is there one out there that may shock us to the degree of Travis Hunter? Probably not. But is there a name or two that you have your eye on this time around?
Well, the one, I guess, inside our top 32 that we know has been linked to Coach Prime is Brandon Ennis. I wrote that story 2 weeks ago about Brandon Ennis, the wide receiver who is a longtime Ohio State commit, but he pointed out that Coach Prime had reached out and told him he was going to a Power 5 school long before Deion Sanders was announced as the head coach at Colorado. We'll see. I mean, no real smoke since then. But Coop, if you want me to put on the 10 hat, right, and I had to get weird and speculate, I think one name no one has talked about is Zachariah Branch, wide receiver 1 for us in the class of 2023. His grandfather, Cliff Branch, attended Colorado. You don't think Coach Prime has sent out at least one feeler there? And again, this is just speculation, but if there's one name inside that top 32, maybe besides Caden Proctor, who has announced a Colorado offer, maybe it's Branch, one of the most explosive playmakers in all of 2023.
Speculation season, that would definitely send a ripple effect across the West Coast and definitely to Lincoln Riley in Southern California. But let's get a little bit more realistic, Drew. There are a handful of names right now that we are keeping an eye on that have prior commitments, but right now also teams doing their due diligence, trying to flip commitments before National Signing Day, and these prospects put pen to paper. One of those names, David Hicks, one of the best defensive linemen in the country, currently committed to Texas A&M, but back when he committed priorly, Drew, we thought this was a recruitment kind of trending towards Oklahoma. The Sooners still in there, but Dan Lanning, the Danimal up in Eugene, still working for Oregon as well.
Here, Coop, I want to ask you this. Who would it be a bigger win for? Oklahoma, we always talk about how we love their defensive class and what Brent Venables is doing there, especially in that front seven. I mean, heck, you toss Hicks into that group, and that might be a best on the when we put the position groups together. But what about Oregon? I mean, you worked there. You've been out on the West Coast. I mean, getting a body like that, I mean, that's got to be huge. So you tell me, who would that be better for, Oregon or Oklahoma?
You just said it. The premium beef is so hard to find on the West Coast in the Pacific Northwest. Sometimes you got to go down to Texas. And listen, Dan Lanning, defense coordinator, Tausili, they've done an excellent job recruiting David Hicks. He's been to Eugene twice in the last couple weeks or so. So listen, when you're looking at this, obviously, I think the big one, the biggest addition, who this would be for, it would be for the Ducks. And it would obviously be a huge addition for Oklahoma as well. And then Texas A&M, if they can keep them in the fold. I don't think Texas A&M is hurting for defensive linemen. We saw what they did last year. Oklahoma, they could use this, but they also have Derek LeBlanc in the middle as well and PJ Adebawore, who we like. So in terms of the biggest score, Drew, I'm going to go Oregon here. Another name that we got an eye on, and Drew, you've been following this one for a while, but that is top 247 tight end Lawson Lucky, currently committed to the University of Georgia. It seems like tight end coach Todd Hartley is looking around a little bit. Deuce Robinson, recently named a 5-star by 24/7 Sports, could be trending to the Bulldogs. Lawson Lucky in Alabama. They've been flirting quite a bit. What do you think about that one?
I don't know how this has flown under the national radar. I mean, Georgia, tight end U. We know what Brock Bowers did, Darnell Washington. Heck, Oscar Delp got on the field there late in the season. I mean, they were recruiting that position as good as anyone. But Lawson Lucky, who has been committed for well over a year, quietly flirting with Alabama, who has that #1 ranked recruiting class. And to me, we see Hartley flirting with Deuce Robinson, like you said. I mean, bringing him in for an official visit, also bringing Walker Lyons in. I mean, could TEU lose one of their commitments? I think it's possible. And if that does happen, certainly interesting, because it's a big shakeup, I think, in the SEC. Now, Alabama gets Lawson Lucky, who we have compared to Brock Bowers light, a guy that can do a little bit of anything. So not being talked about enough, in my opinion, heading into signing day. And look, Nick Saban, Alabama, they always have a few tricks up their sleeves when it's time for pen to hit paper or for people to use that old fax machine.
I love the fit of Lawson Lucky in Athens. We'll see if he sticks. Good place in Tuscaloosa, too. Drew, let's stay in the SEC and let's go to the SEC East. In John Walker right now, he would be the highest ranked commitment in Central Florida history. This would be huge for Gus Malzahn to hold on to him, but a top 247 defensive lineman. Billy Napier and the Gators, they've been working on this one a long time. A lot of mutual interest there, a lot of smoke. To me, this kind of seems like the most likely out of the three we just mentioned.
Well, if it was likely, why hasn't it already happened? I mean, John Walker has been a regular in Gainesville, and he's been a regular there in Orlando at UCF. I mean, most Gator fans are just assuming that Walker is going to flip. I think it could happen, but why hasn't it happened yet? Why is he waiting? Why is this stretching and going the distance right up to the signing period? And remember, UCF, they're transitioning to the Big 12 next season. They're going to go there. I think they're telling John Walker he can play early. And if they hold on to him, that is a huge flex for Gus Malzahn and his staff. I mean, Florida has recruited the state of Florida as good as anyone, right? We keep talking about it. We've talked about it in the past on our shows about how we like that class 1 through 22. Well, guess what? Over 80% of it is from the Sunshine State. So this would be one prospect that Florida just can't get out of their backyard. And that would be, a potential, I'm not going to say win or a loss, but certainly notable as Florida looks to revamp that defensive line in the middle.
Would be a cherry on top of the defensive line that they already have right now. Kelly Collins, Cameron James, Gavin Hill, a loaded defensive line class coming into Gainesville. But guys, we appreciate you joining us, and keep it locked to 24/7 Sports, especially over the next 6 days. But for our director of scouting, our main man, Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. We'll see you soon.
All right, the biggest headline of the day isn't a flip. I mean, kind of, it's pancakes, right? But a major commitment announcement. What was the highest rated uncommitted prospect? No more. Samson Okunlola is headed to Miami. So let's take you back out to Thayer Academy in Massachusetts and talk to our national analyst, Brian Dohn. Brian, you are in the building where this all went down, and you spoke with Okunlola after making his decision. What did he say?
Just everything fits so well at Miami, just in terms of his trust with the coaching staff. And it begins, Mario Cristobal, the head coach, obviously offensive line experience coming up through the ranks. Alex Mirabal, the offensive line coach there. Panay Sewell is the guy everybody points to as the first-round draft pick that he developed when he was at Oregon. So it came down to all that stuff. And listen, Samson Okunlola, you saw him eat pancakes, pancake honcho. We all know that stuff. But he is, when I look at this NIL world, he is somebody that really understood how to brand himself, has been doing it for more than a year. And so you take the football and you think if Miami can get back to being the U from when I was younger, which was a long time ago, but if they can get back to being the U, and if he develops as he should, listen, the chances to market himself and sign some sponsorship deals, they could exist. And in South Beach, that's a good place to start.
All the pancake houses in Miami are probably doing this right now, Brian. We saw some of his tape. We saw his physicality. We saw his tenacity. When you see him as a prospect, what is Miami getting?
Oh, geez. Listen, I think we always talk about football stuff, and I understand why. But first of all, they're getting a really smart kid who is well beyond, I think he turned 18 last month, well beyond those years. It's funny, I was talking to his coach after the announcement, and he said even as a freshman, when Samson was there, he's talking to the offensive lineman about how to do stuff. And as a freshman, Samson walked over and said, no, here's a technique you use. Here's how you do it. So, yes, we understand that he's 6'5", 305. It's legit. There's no, they're not heightening, as we say. So you have that. He has the length with everything. The athleticism is there. The footwork is there. But the drive to be great and to work on his technique complements all that stuff. I do not believe very many freshmen going into college have a chance to play on the offensive line. And he's going to be down there for spring practice. The school made sure that he can graduate in January, which is not a common occurrence here. He's going to get through spring practice. I think he's a kid. Listen, I always think it's tough to start as a freshman your first game on the line of scrimmage, but by October, I could see him as part of the rotation down there. I think he's that far along technique-wise. His strength is there. And let's not forget, he's a really good wrestler, too. And the flexibility and the competitiveness all shines through there as well.
I mean, anywhere he ended up, that team was automatically going to get a lot better. But there's a lot of momentum surrounding the U right now. How big a piece is he in what they're building in their rebuild?
Well, listen, anytime you get a 5-star, it's huge. And then the crazy part is, well, it's like you said, though. It's how big is it? Well, it's a 5-star, but he's the third highest 5-star they have in the class. They have Cromani McLean. I think he's the number 2 player. Francis Maui Goa, Blair, I hope I said that right, who's the number 8 player in the class. So, and he talked about that when I spoke with him on Wednesday night, and we were talking about some stuff and his thought process. And one of the things he kept going back to about Miami was, hey, there's dogs in this class. It's not just me. You can see it building. And yeah, they didn't have the season they wanted to on the field, but the recruits are coming. They had some good ones last year. They have a lot of good ones this year. And he sees it as the build, and he understands that you're not going to turn around and be contenders maybe right away for the playoff, but keep getting these kind of players, and you have a chance to.
Yeah, Blair,
Francis Mauigoa, you got it, Brian. Francis Mauigoa is exactly the name. You crushed that one.
Blair,
I wanted to ask you about the impact that he has, not only in kind of like his football sense, but you mentioned him being a really smart kid. How much can this help Miami recruit up the coast?
Well, I think it helps in a huge way, and especially the more success he has there, success breeds success kind of deal. And he is a kid that understands branding. He's well thought. He's smart. He understands the business aspect of it. I was with the athletic director before the announcement, and she was talking about how, she sat with him and went through, just some marketing ideas and just how he could take advantage of that also. So listen, it's one of those village type deals here at Thayer Academy where a lot of people had a different hand in things. And if you see what the reception was, when he made the announcement, and, you got 400 people crushing to a table to see what was going on, he gets all that stuff, and he's smart enough to be able to understand how to use that, and also keep it together in terms of understanding not to let that get into the football aspect of it and keep off the field.
It definitely is part of the game. Excited to see what he does down in the U. Let's stick with some other 5-star prospects here. Nicholas Harbor is now the top uncommitted 5-star thanks to the most recent commitment. According to Steve Wiltfong, he had a great trip to Maryland last weekend, but what is the latest on his recruitment since that visit?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I spoke to Nicholas on Wednesday night, and so not only was he at Maryland 2 weekends ago just on an unofficial visit, this past weekend he was there for an official visit, and then Wednesday night he returned again to watch Maryland play UCLA, which, didn't go Maryland's way. But listen, there's a lot of good things trending in Maryland's favor. And when you're talking about having a kid on campus 3 times in less than 2 weeks, that always bodes well. Now, the flip side, he is not signing next week. He is going to wait until February. Well, let's just say that's what he says right now. We know in recruiting things always change, but right now the plan is to sign in February, make a visit to LSU, maybe make another visit. He will not be going to Georgia this weekend, nothing for this weekend. He told me he's going to sit back, relax a little bit, really enjoy the holidays. He's playing in the Under Armour Bowl down in Florida, so we'll get a chance to see him there as well. And he also talked about the importance of NIL, and not just in terms of, he wants a ton of money, but he's a unique guy because of his track ability and his 10.28 speed in the 100. And so between Maryland, Michigan, South Carolina, those are the focal points right now.
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned Maryland having a lot of momentum. It seems like they have momentum with Oluwatosin Balade. He decommitted from South Carolina recently. What's the latest on him?
Well, it's funny you bring him up. And who was at the basketball game with Nicholas Harbor? Oluwatosin Babalade. And so he decommitted from South Carolina. He's a guy that, listen, he plays right down the street from Maryland. And when I say right down the street, I literally mean it's just a few minutes there. You could walk there in 10 minutes or so, probably. Maybe a little longer if you walk slow. But he is a guy that DeMath has had a connection to Maryland. They've been on him a lot. It looked like early in the fall, Maryland was going to have a chance to flip him. Then things kind of settled down a little bit, and then kind of I'm down at the Shrine Bowl in California, and all of a sudden he decommits, and the word is he decommitted. And Mike Loxley, the Maryland head coach, always likes some kind of fireworks on signing day. And last year it was Jayshawn Barham who was committed to South Carolina and flipped to Maryland on signing day. Maybe we don't have the same kind of drama, but I could see Babalade maybe waiting until signing day and then just announcing to give Maryland that kind of boost that they always seem to get that day.
Yeah, a lot of excitement surrounding the Terps right now. Meanwhile, North Carolina transfer. We're going to transfers now. Cornerback Tony Grimes is visiting Texas A&M. We all agree that transfer portal is very similar to recruiting. So he's been linked to a lot of other schools like Virginia Tech and USC. So any updates with him?
Yeah, I spoke with his dad just before his Virginia Tech visit. They were excited to go there, see what Brent Pry was like. Traded some texts with Tony's dad after the visit. They were on their way to A&M, so I didn't want to bug him for too much. But he said he loved the visit, and what really stood out to Grimes and his family was what Brent Pry is doing there at Virginia Tech with how they run the defense, with just in terms of playing a lot of press coverage, which I think is something that Tony's going to look for in his next school. And so much so that I get the sense, and I don't know if it's a done deal yet, but it really looks like there's a chance he'll make an official visit there during that transfer window, January 4th through the 8th. He's at A&M, like you had mentioned. It's a program. A&M's a program that he liked a lot going through the process. And early on, when his recruitment was just kind of in its infancy, there were a lot of people that thought he could wind up there at A&M. And then from there, you go to USC. And listen, if you're a kid and you look at what USC did this year in their first year under Lincoln Riley and how much they turned that around, and you have the quarterback in place, and Tony's not looking for a 3-year home. He's looking for a home for a year, maybe 2, depending on, if you get the year back from the COVID stuff, he can do that. But he's looking for a place he can play right away, play press coverage. And then another school I keep hearing about is Penn State. They've had discussions with Penn State. There's talk of him making an official visit to Penn State in January, kind of that same window that he's looking at the Virginia Tech visit. But I think once you get out of this USC visit over the weekend, you'll be able to look, see where things are, and kind of regroup and make decisions.
I love it. Brian Dohn joining us live from Thayer Academy, where Samson Okunlola has announced his commitment to Miami. Brian, thank you. Go get some pancakes. Maybe not the green ones, though. The green ones kind of freak me out a little bit. The orange ones, too. But, hey, he's going to Miami. You fans are very happy about that. And we are very happy to bring some viewer questions to you. We've got a lot right now. So let's start with Lance G. asking, if Dante Moore goes to UCLA, could Oregon pivot to with signing day less than a week away? Chaos.
Yeah, it would be really late, right? We're less than a week away until signing day. This would have to be something that happens immediately for them to be able to move and bring in a prospect on this last official visit weekend. Some names, and this is all speculation, obviously, considering that nothing has happened, but Avery Johnson I would look at as one of the prospects. He's committed to Kansas State, an elite 11 quarterback who, in the past had a little bit of interest in the Ducks. Aiden Childs is a fast rising quarterback in the state of California who plays down in Downey, and he's committed to Oregon State. So what better way to rub your rival the wrong way than to go and maybe poach their top-rated commit? And then a wild card for me would be Jabari Johnson. He's committed to Missouri. He's from the state of Washington, so you wouldn't have to go very far to get him. And obviously there's a lot of moving parts here, and it's all speculation depending on if Dante Moore decides to leave Eugene or not. But those would just be maybe three names that I would put up on the board right now as potential targets for the Ducks.
What do we say? All is fair in love and recruiting, right? I mean, it's just, this is the chaos that we talk about. And of course, you wonder too what happens with five-star wide receiver Jurian Dickey, if he too follows him or what. Again, a lot of speculation. We will get into that if Dante Moore ends up flipping. Let's answer another question here from Adam S. Has Utah turned a corner in recruiting with their string of recent commitments?
Yeah, I was touching on this with Brandon Huffman on our West of the Rest podcast about how we are in a golden era of Utah recruiting. In the past, it would be very difficult for them to keep those in-state prospects home, committed and joining the program and in a way building something with hometown heroes, which is something they like to do. But now they're actually getting these prospects. Caleb Lomu from the state of Arizona, a four-star offensive tackle in the top 24/7, kind of started a snowball effect. Spencer Fano committed with us on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Hunter Clegg, another top 24/7 prospect, flipped from Stanford. They got Smith Snowden earlier this week. He's a four-star corner from nearby Lehigh Skyridge. They're in on Walker Lyons, who backed off a commitment to Stanford. He's a four-star tight end as well. And they are right now kind of clicking on all cylinders. They're developing players to the NFL, and then they're winning on the field, right? They're winning Pac-12 championships and getting to the Rose Bowl. So they have everything kind of clicking right now in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, back-to-back Pac-12 championships. That makes it a pretty easy sell when you go into those living rooms. Last year, they finished as the 34th recruiting class. This year looking like it could be a top 20 class. So very exciting in Utah. Tyler Chambers asks, what happens with Jurian Dickey and Oregon? He just swooped my question here, so now you have to answer it. What happens with Dickey and Oregon if Dante doesn't sign with the Ducks?
You would have to take a step back if you're Jurian Dickey, right? Just common sense kind of says, okay, who's going to throw me the football? I thought Dante Moore was going to be the guy that was going to get me the football. I remember back in the summer, he was taking some visits to some schools. He made it down to Miami. So don't sleep on the U with Jurian Dickey if all this Dante Moore stuff ends up materializing, or if he does end up flipping, or whatever happens there, because I would assume that a lot of schools will be having his number on speed dial, trying to get him on campus, trying to make a late push and figure out if he's a player that could help them. And Jurian Dickey actually had UCLA also in his list of top schools early on in the process. So if he has struck a really good relationship with Dante Moore, I would imagine that if Dante Moore flips to UCLA, one of the first calls that he makes is to his buddy Jurian Dickey about joining him and just heading down south, down the 5 freeway to Southern California.
Yeah, I want to follow up with this. I mean, how often do you see a quarterback and a wide receiver tied to each other? I mean, we don't know, obviously, the extent of their relationship, and ultimately, you're not just choosing a team based on what quarterback is also coming in with you, but how much is that a priority for Dickey as he looks to make this
Emily,
decision?
we see it in the camp circuit every year, right? You see a player from Washington playing receiver, and he's going out to play with a quarterback from Nevada. And they strike relationships. All these players know where the other one is going. Maybe you strike up some chemistry on the field, or you like, that bond that you maybe form with a player. And then when those commitments happen, I think all these players are speaking to each other. They're all talking about which schools they like, which ones they're going to go to, which ones they're going to visit. together, and then which ones they might eventually play and suit up for. So this is a huge deal. It's the next 3 or 4 years of your life, unless you enter the transfer portal. But obviously developing those relationships and making sure that your quarterback is someone that you trust, and if you're the quarterback, that receiver will trust as well. You know, we heard Deuce Robinson speak about it recently, right? He has that relationship with Malachi Nelson at USC. He has that relationship with Arch Manning over at Texas. He has been speaking with a lot of these quarterbacks, and I think that's an important part of this process.
And we know these quarterbacks do some recruiting of their own. Again, if you're just popping on right now, Dante Moore is still committed to Oregon. Steve Wiltfong latest reporting is that the buzz indicates that there is a favorite to UCLA. So we will make sure to check back in with him if anything happens there. Let's keep it rolling with some questions here. Daniel J., where does Washington State go with Sam Leavitt flipping to Michigan State?
Yeah, I was looking at Jabari Johnson. I mentioned him as a possible Oregon prospect that they could flip. Washington State as well. You know, he's another player from within the state's borders, committed to Missouri, so he'd be going across the country to play his football in the SEC. That's maybe a phone call that you try to make late. But for the most part, I think it's so late, and you lose Sam Leavitt this late, that you have to kind of see what's available maybe after signing day, or maybe you make the emphasis on the transfer portal. They still need an offensive coordinator at Wazoo as well, so maybe you make sure that whichever offensive coordinator arrives on campus handpicks his guy that's going to be able to lead the offense in a couple of years. So a lot of moving parts. That's, you know, the unfortunate side effect of having the coaching carousel and the transfer portal opening up ahead of signing day and all these flips, and it just kind of creates a lot of chaos. But, you know, Emily, we're all here for it.
We are eating it up. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of fantasy draft. I don't know if you play fantasy football, but your draft is not the end of your roster building, kind of like signing day is not the end of your roster building, and that you can still consolidate in the transfer portal. So it's not all over yet, but it is very exciting for a lot of these teams. Let's go to a question from Colin K. Do you think Peyton Bowen ends up at Oklahoma, currently committed to Notre Dame?
Yeah, he put out a tweet last night, you know, something to the effect of, you know, leaks about my process are misinformation, you know, don't pay attention to any of that stuff.
All smoke.
And I would still believe in my heart of hearts that he sticks with Notre Dame. I just believe in Marcus Freeman and his ability to close. You know, I think we're forgetting, I know they have a really good class, but I think we're forgetting how good of a recruiter he has been for Notre Dame, and why he got that job, and why, you know, Notre Dame hired from within once Brian Kelly left for LSU. I would just think that he has such a good relationship with Peyton Bowen. He's obviously taken a number of unofficial visits, been out to games, been out to a number of schools that are still trying to get him. But I still like the Irish closer to signing day to end up with Peyton Bowen.
Something tells me Colin K is just an Oklahoma fan and willing it to happen, but we'll see what happens with Peyton Bowen. Our final question here is from Lou, asking, is a mass flippening, this is his terminology, to Colorado possible on signing day? Colorado is definitely a place that we're keeping our eye on as we get ready for signing day.
Yeah, spatula season. We saw it earlier in the show, right, where Andrew Ivins speculated that there were some big high-profile receivers that could be listening to whatever Deion Sanders wants to say right now about getting prospects over. And I did speak with a number of in-state prospects who were in Boulder this past weekend. They got a chance to hang out with Deion. They got to take photos with the jerseys on, with the full uniform, the helmets, and they had some muscle cars in the back of the end zone. They had a big photo shoot, kind of a meet and greet with Deion Sanders, and they told me that they had a great time. He has a great personality, and they feel that Colorado will be a team to be reckoned with. I don't know if he flips any of those guys that are in-state, that are committed to other schools. It might be a little bit too late, but I do think that he has a really good shot at making some noise ahead of signing day.
Yeah, here it is. Signing day 2022. If you remember back to signing day 2021, Deion making some headlines with Travis Hunter. We'll see what he does this year. Don't forget to join us right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page next Wednesday for all-day signing day coverage. We are about to say goodbye. As soon as we do, I have some great advice for you here. Go subscribe to this page so you will be ready to go. We are ready to go. Blair, thank you so much. He is Blair Angulo. I am Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.